I had an interesting conversation today with a brother from the Middle Nation team. We were talking about the Article 6 campaign, and he was talking about something called the Charter of the Forest. He was talking about the Magna Carta, and then he talked about the Charter of the Forest, which almost nobody knows about. Everybody knows about the Magna Carta, but almost nobody knows about the Charter of the Forest. I mean, I didn't know about it until that conversation. And the reason why you know about one and you don't know about the other is basically because of which constituency each document was designed for. The Magna Carta protected the rights of the barons and the aristocracy, while the Charter of the Forest uh, protected basically the rights of the common people, both with regards to property and access to land and so on, resources and whatnot. So, of course, the Magna Carta became the shining beacon of everything wonderful and good, and the Charter of the Forest, more or less, got pushed to the wayside. Well, what's this got to do with Article 6, right? Well, because this is the pattern of the West. They use documents to enshrine their goodness. They make their justice and their decency official by means of official paperwork, not by their actions, not by their behavior. I mean, everyone knows that Western history, especially American history, is basically a chronology of broken promises, violated agreements, and broken treaties. Well, you can almost say that whenever they tell you on paper that they're going to do thus and so, you may as well read that as them telling you that they're going to do the complete opposite. If they say they're going to do this on paper, then that means they're going to do the opposite of that in real life. They use these documents as nothing but cover. I mean, they go ahead and do whatever it is that they want to do, but then they'll point back to the document, whether it's the U.S. Constitution or the Universal Declaration of Human Rights or the Magna Carta or what have you. They'll point to that document and say, see, we can't be doing anything wrong because it's right here in black and white that we don't do anything wrong. It says it right here. They do all sorts of crimes, all sorts of atrocities under the cover of their official declarations that they are opposed to crimes and atrocities. So they can't possibly be bad because officially they're good. It's right there in the documents. That's how they do. That's literally the purpose of their documents. That's the purpose of their declarations. They wave these documents like an advancing army waving a white flag. I'll say that again. An advancing army waving the white flag of truce, just to trick you into thinking that you're safe, that you're secure, that your rights are protected, but it's a false flag. How many agreements and how many treaties did they sign, for example, with the Native Americans, the indigenous people of North America? How many treaties and agreements did they sign? Is there even one that they didn't break? The Trail of Tears is the Trail of Tears, or was the Trail of Tears, because it's a trail of broken promises, broken treaties, and broken agreements, all of which were made with the most solemn declarations of absolute sincerity. That's how they do. That's what they've always done. They write these fictions on paper just as a tactic of misdirection. And then when the reality of their actions contradicts those fictions, then they tell you to believe what they wrote and not what they do. Yes, the so-called moral high ground of the West is nothing but a pile of documents, charters, treaties, and declarations, none of which they ever abide by. Historically, they did that mostly against non-Westerners, against like the people of the global South and so on, indigenous peoples. But of course, they did it also against their own common people, just like the Charter of the Forest, against the poor and the underclass. And they're doing it right now with the American people. The government, the powers that be, do whatever they want, and everyone knows it. They do whatever they want, but they tell you, look at this beautiful Constitution. Isn't it lovely? It says right here that you have freedom and justice and human rights and democracy and all that. It says it right here. It says right here that you have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So you must be mistaken. It's all right here in black and white. Everything's fine. Everything's good. So they use these official documents just to plaster over all of the things that they're doing that violate what's written in those documents. They didn't mean it when they wrote it, just like they didn't mean any of the agreements and treaties that they ever signed. They didn't mean it in 1787 when they signed the U.S. Constitution for the American people. I'm telling you, as much as they lie verbally, they lie even more on paper. Before the ink dried on the American Constitution, they were trying to figure out ways to circumvent it, and they've been doing it ever since. You have democracy on paper, sure, but what good does that do? when all of the power lies in the private sector. And the institutions of the private sector are rigidly totalitarian in nature and in structure. I mean, you can go for years living in the United States without ever interacting with the government, whether it's on a municipal level or the city or the state or the federal government. But you can't go without interacting with a company by mid-morning. On paper, you have freedom, but your work contract supersedes the Constitution. They can tell you down to the most minute activity what you are and are not allowed to do. But hey, it says right here, you're free. It says here on the Constitution, so you must be free. Just like it says right here that the Black Hills will belong to the Lakota people forever. So I guess it still belongs to them, right? Legally. So yes, the same goes for the UN Charter. You said, in the Charter, you said that anyone who persistently violates the Charter will get expelled from the United Nations. But instead of expelling the most persistent violator of the Charter, the U.S. runs the United Nations. You said that the UN is supposed to give all nations, big and small, equal voice and equal say, and you said that it's supposed to be democratic, that international affairs should be a matter of consensus, but nothing happens at the UN unless America says so. And no one is allowed to even call that into question. America is never supposed to be held accountable. America is never supposed to be expected to honor the terms and conditions of the UN Charter. And what do people say when you talk about invoking Article 6? What's one of the first things they say when you talk about expelling the U.S. from the UN? The first thing that they'll say is, but what about the funding? The United States is the largest funder of the United Nations. So what are you going to do if you kick them out? Think about that. You are implicitly accepting that money buys the U.S. the right to overrule the rest of the planet. You're implicitly accepting the very American mentality that rights, authority, and having a voice are all commodities. So whoever pays the most gets the most. No matter what the Charter says, no matter what the rules are, no matter what the written agreement states, money overrules all of that. The Charter said all nations big and small. It doesn't say all nations big and small, but mostly the one who provides the most funding. You see, America and the West have normalized not taking contracts seriously, not taking agreements seriously, not taking the rules seriously, as much as they talk about rules-based order. They've normalized this aristocratic feudal lord approach to the world, and the common people and their equivalent in terms of states around the world just have their rights pushed to the wayside, just like the Charter of the Forest. Everyone just forgets about that. But this campaign, the Article 6 campaign, is saying no. Those days are over. Agreements mean something. Your word means something. Promises are to be kept. You can't just write it down and then throw it behind your back. I don't think that there's a single member nation at the UN who hasn't been lied to by the United States at least once or twice or half a dozen times or more. There's not a nation that hasn't had promises broken by the West, and they're tired of this impunity. Now, they were never in a position before to enforce the agreements that they made with America. No one ever had the leverage or the power to make America keep its word. No one could hold America accountable for breaking its promises and its treaties, but now they can. The Global South can hold America accountable. The Global South can say, no, we happen to take the United Nations Charter seriously, and you're going to have to take it seriously too, or else we're going to have to renegotiate the terms of the contract, renegotiate the terms of the agreement, or else scrap it all together and start with something new. You don't get to use your documents, your official declarations, your treaties and charters and agreements and so on as alibis anymore, because that's how you use them, as alibis. All of mankind is witness to your crimes, but you just use your official documents to prove you're innocent. When you do wrong, when you violate what you set down on paper, when you renege on what you signed up to, there's going to be accountability. There has to be. The Article 6 campaign is the beginning of the end of the cognitive dissonance that the West and that America has inflicted on the whole world. You don't get to gaslight us anymore. You don't get to be wicked by your actions, but still considered officially virtuous because of your declarations. Word and deed must align. You can't be good by document, but evil by conduct, because the world is going to start holding you to what you put down on paper. We want the United Nations to work. And that means abiding by their own charter, by their own rules. All the members, even the members with the deepest pockets, no member should be above the charter. And if this still isn't enough to make the United Nations work, then we either need to undertake a comprehensive reform of the entire institution, or we need to start all over again and make a new institution. But either way, I believe that we're entering an era in which you're going to have to honor your commitments, honor your agreements, and keep your word, or else face the consequences.